when you think about net worth, or when you write down what your net worth is we want that to be your starting point to then be curious. So then you can dig deeper and you can go further into your goals and plans.
Hello and welcome to the Neighborhood Money Podcast, a video podcast here where we talk about money, entrepreneurship, and helping you build a life you deserve. Drew, this week we've got a pretty cool episode ahead of us. We're going to talk all about net worth, but before we really dive in, I see that in your image. So if you guys are watching over on YouTube, Drew's got a new background and even a little new fashion style. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, this isn't a green screen. I can tell you that. I'm actually in Florida right now with my wife and her side of the family, and then her one of her friends and their side of the family. So we're getting out of getting out of the cold weather. Right when we left, it was like 5 to 9 inches of snow, and right now it is 73 degrees. So I'm pretty excited about the weather, and a little bit warmer earlier today. So if there's any type of weird lag or bad internet connections, it could definitely be because of where I am right now.
We're going to power through it and we'll see how it comes out. But today, our episode's all about net worth. So we're going to talk about what it is, what it can and cannot do for you, why it's good to look at your net worth and not just looking at your monthly income and expenses. And I think the really fun part, Drew, is going to be where we talk about where you might stack up with your net worth by age group. So we're actually going to look from 18 all the way to 69 or 70 retirement age. And we'll share with you guys what the median net worth is by age group. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Then we're going to, wrap it all up with talking about how can you reach your net worth goals. And we'll give you some tips at the end of the episode when we wrap things up. So Drew, let's dive into the episode. Net worth, you hear about it all the time when you're in the financial space, but a lot of people might not even actually know what net worth is, how you calculate it, what it does for you. So what is net worth?
I look at it as looking at your financial statements for your personal life. If you look in the corporations or like stock, the stocks for like the publicly traded companies, they always have their financial statements or income and loss statements, and then they have their balance sheet. So like the net worth is your personal balance sheet, and you can see your financial strength or weaknesses in a like snapshot of really being able to look at a broader picture of your finances. And I think it's a cool thing to look at.
It's really a tool or an indicator of your wealth at any given point in time. And Drew, you're absolutely right. It is your personal balance sheet. So you're actually looking at, when you calculate your net worth, what are your assets? So what are the things that you own that have value in the marketplace, whether that's cash, bank accounts, your investment accounts, retirement accounts, a house, all of those things that you can go to the marketplace and sell. And then what are your liabilities, or in other words, what are your debts? And so typically debts, right, are going to be your mortgages, your car loans, student loans, and things like that.
Yep.
And so to actually calculate net worth, it's a pretty simple calculation. Once you get all of that stuff gathered together, it's just taking your assets minus your liabilities. So what you own minus what you owe, and that gives you your net worth, or your snapshot of your wealth at any given point in time.
You actually took my line. I was going to say what you own versus what you owe, but that's what your net worth is. It's what you own, what has value. Even stuff like if you're thinking of like a life insurance policy, if it's like a whole or universal that has cash value, that can be part of an asset towards you that has value, that can be fairly liquid. So that's something not to overlook. But then also what you owe. So you might have value in your car or automobile, whatever you want to call it, but there's also an outstanding balance most likely on that car. So you may have some value in your car that helps offset that loan, but after that loan's paid off, then you just have the value of your car.
Now we know how to calculate the net worth, what it's used for, to really show you, what is your true wealth at any given point in time. But what can you do with this, Drew? Or is it really just a number that you can, look at and admire?
I think one thing for sure is you definitely look at it and admire it. But really, I think it's important because when you get that snapshot of your personal balance sheet, you can kind of see what type of financial strength that you're in. You may have income coming in and you have enough income to offset those expenses on a month to month basis, but you might be drowning in debt. You might not
Right.
have anything really worth value that's going to help you at retirement or later on, or if you're getting a poor situation. And so I think that's like the biggest thing to think about what that net worth is you might have a month to month payments and you feeling strong and you feel like your financial strength. But if you look at the broader picture, you're like, holy crap,
Yeah.
I have like hundreds of thousands in
Right.
debt and I have no assets. So it's a good way to be able to take a step back and really look at it in a big picture.
You hit it kind of on the head. And to use maybe some slightly different words, it's your net worth is really telling you where you need to go. And so at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that you plan for is retirement or not having to work one day, or maybe potentially living a life that's a little bit bigger than what you're currently living. And your net worth is a really good measure of that. And I always think of it from a retirement standpoint. So I've got my retirement number that I'm aiming for. And your net worth is the best picture of making sure that you're on track while you continue to save and invest outside of just looking, like you said, Drew, on that month to month basis. Because, yeah, you could be doing quite all right. You could have a nice income. You could be meeting all your expenses and having a little bit left over. But if you're spending your income on things, whether it's a depreciating asset like a car or just on
Hmm.
other things that actually aren't buying an asset, but it's just more so just buying something or things, and you're not actually buying those assets that grow your wealth. That's a real issue. So I think the net worth actually tells you how you're doing at any given point in time. And what I really like about it, Drew, is that if you calculate your net worth now and then you calculate it in a year from now, you can see the progress that you've made over that year.
So the net worth, being able to take that snapshot and check your progress of your goals, I think is very important. And it's a way to be able to focus in on certain parts of your life when you might have a bunch of debt. You don't know where exactly to set it up or where to start with it. You can actually with when you have your numbers into your net worth calculator, your assets versus your or minus your liabilities, it's nice to be able to pick out those debts and see them through like your journey and tracking how those go down and see your value of your assets go up. And I think we've talked about in a previous episode of just the psychology behind paying off debt or increasing your assets and being able to see something grow even if it's on paper. I think mentally it kind of can become almost addicting and you want to keep growing that number bigger and bigger and bigger.
Specifically when you're in a lot of debt, it can be very demoralizing once as you're trying to get out of debt because your bank accounts aren't growing, right? You're putting all that money
Hmm.
towards whether student loans, car loans, or whatever the debt is that you're trying to pay off. But when you track your net worth, sure, you might be negative because of debt, but you're going to see that negative grow smaller and smaller and smaller and flip positive. So you're going to be able to actually track that progress even though you won't actually see it in your bank account, which I think for me personally was a huge aspect and really what really turned my financial situation around when we got out of debt is when we started tracking our net worth because not only did we use a debt snowball to pay off our smaller loans and get that motivation momentum there, but also tracking the net
Hmm.
worth, we got to see our net worth climb even though our bank accounts weren't.
And something just to like bring up too with the net worth is you might have a bunch of value in these assets, but something to think about is even the liquidity of these assets. So if you have most of your value for this net worth into a house, it's nice to have the house, but you have to think, like, are you really going to be selling that house and then not living in anything? So something to think about is the assets that you put in. I mean, even if you wanted to slowly, just like, or not slowly, but if you wanted to hide, say it's just your house, because you have to think if what's your goals, and you can say, all right, I have this much in retirement, this much in my life insurance policy, this much in a vehicle, because that's something you maybe or would sell more, or what's in your checking account or your savings account.
Right.
So I think that stuff's important to remember when you're looking at your net worth. Is it's nice to have a bunch of value in a house and not having any more mortgage by the time you retire, but what are you then going to do with, say, an illiquid asset like your house? Do you want to sell that and go on an RV trip for the rest of your life? So it's something to think about when you are looking at that net worth.
I'm trying to get Hannah to still buy into the whole RV retirement life. We'll see how that actually goes and plays out in the future. But Drew, the really cool thing about net worth and what we're going to walk through next is that you can, once you calculate your net worth, you can actually go out. There's a bunch of different websites that publish average and median net worths by age group, but you can actually use your net worth to compare yourself to your peers or to where you potentially should be based on financial guidelines, gurus, whatever you want to call them. So I think before we really dive into this, Drew, the difference between median net worth and average net worth or mean
Yep.
net worth.
Great thing to
I
bring
think
up.
it's a really interesting conversation because typically when you think of anything, you think, okay, what's the average and how do I compare to that? Well, net worth is considerably different, isn't it?
Considerably different. I'm going to go into my sheet here, and this was like from, I think, bankrate.com article. And so they said the average net worth for a U.S. citizen or U.S. families is $748,000. That's the median or the mean to your average. And that seems, whoa, that's really high. And
Right,
you
right.
might be singing, I'm not even close to that. But then you look at the median and it's $121,000, and
Hmm.
that one seems much more reasonable. But that just shows the swing between an average and a median, and those high income earners really push that average up like huge.
But even then, Drew, it's not really that indicative of where you should be because it's all individualized, right? When we talk about personal finance, you need to decide how much you need to have your net worth by any given age. But Drew, let's dive into actual net worths by age according to Yahoo Finance as of this year. So I'm going to break it down into
Mhm.
really three main stages of life: early adulthood, middle aged, and then senior. And then we're actually going to go in 5 year increments. And we're going to go through this pretty quickly. Hopefully, this gives you an idea of whatever age you are, where you stack up. And then we'll also throw a couple of guidelines or rules of thumbs or whatever you want to call them as we go through this to give you a sense of potentially where you should be and how you can hopefully use this in your personal life. So, if we start, Drew, with early
Mhm.
adulthood, that's really the 18 to 39-year-old. So, if we think about
Yep.
18 to 29, that's really the college years or really just getting started with growing your income, maybe to getting your first job out of high school, whatever it might be. But the 18 to 24-year-old age band has a median net worth of 8,000. 25 to 29 year olds have a dip in net worth of $7,500 or just under $8,000. And Drew, I think that's really attributed because of college and student loans.
When you're looking at that 18 to 24 age, and it's was a little bit higher than that next bracket of 25 to 29 year olds, and really I would say that 18 to 24 is, there's probably not much debt in there. They're not in a life where they probably are accounting for as much debt, and they might be saving up for some type of a vehicle, or they have a vehicle. And also you're not in a stage of life where make you're you're at the early parts of your working career, so your wages aren't going to be quite as high. But then it is interesting that it dips at that next stage in life. But I guess if you're thinking about it, if you start having a family, if you're getting out of college, or you're getting out of like your, say, like a master's program, and then you end up decide you want a house, and then you have two people in your household, so maybe you have two vehicles potentially there. It's just pretty crazy on how much life events in those early stages happen and really affect that net worth. And the thing that they definitely don't have on their side is time. And
Right.
if you have any money in retirement accounts, time is your best friend,
Right.
and it's such an early stage. So the compounding interest and contributions don't really have any time for that to grow.
Right. And it's pretty flat from 18 to 29, roughly at that 8,000. Now, once you get into your 30, a general rule of thumb is by the time you're 30, you're going to want to have half your annual salary. So if you make $100,000, you're going to want $50,000 of net worth. So half of your annual salary of net worth. Just a rule of thumb again, it all is dependent
Hmm.
on whatever your situation is. People that are aged 30 to 34 have a median net worth of 35,000, and then 35 to 29-year-olds have a median net worth of 55,000. Drew, I think this is when you start seeing
Mhm.
these individuals starting to grow their income and start getting a little bit of that compounding on their side.
As well as taking away some of those debt, I think is, if they use the debt snowball that we talked about. The crazy thing with this net worth is you have both assets growing and your debts decreasing,
Right.
and it just that so it makes that increase of your net worth just go exponential, because it's almost like a double factor that's going on to that. So I think as you have a better vision of where your life's going, I think at that stage, and like you said, those promotions may be coming and you're further along in your career, and definitely the compounding interest is starting to come into effect there, and you've gone through a few market swings and doing the dollar cost averaging that we love to do.
Right, right. So then it brings us into the middle-aged individuals. So that's 40 to 59, or essentially 60. So a rule of thumb here is by the time you're 40, you're going to
Mhm.
want to have 2 times your annual salary in net worth. So back to my example, if you have a $100,000 annual salary, you're going to want to have a $200,000 net worth. And so people from 40 to 44 have a median net worth of 127,000. 45 to 49 is 164,000. That's a pretty big jump. So 164,000 by the time you're 50 compared to 55,000 by the time you're 40.
Pretty amazing how big of a jump that actually is when you're looking at that. And I'm not quite to that stage of my life for the middle age, the 40 to say 60. Uh, so it's hard to see exactly what's maybe the contributing factors, but as you said, that compounding interest has to be probably just an absolute monster and a huge part of that. So it's really interesting to kind of see these numbers, but I really like your rule of thumb because sometimes you don't really know where to start. And that's the thing I love about these rule of thumbs is you have that starting point, and if you now know that, say you're really far behind on this at the time of benchmarking yourself, it gives you a good chance, an opportunity to regroup, look at that net worth again, and then make your goals for your unique situation and exactly what you want to do for your future. So it's a great way to take a step back again and benchmark yourself and be able to plan for the future even more.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love rule of thumbs, but I also don't like rule of thumbs because I think people can get so caught on them, right? Like they're good in a generalized aspect, but when you really get down into your personal situation, they kind of get thrown out the window outside of just like a starting point. But Drew, I think when we look at the 40 to 50-year-olds, another big aspect there is probably that the fact that they're paying down their house, right? They're getting out of debt further. They're getting that compounding interest,
Mm.
and they're really seeing that increase in their net worth. Now, I think this is a good time to kind of just take a step back and look at the numbers as they are. Is well, if a 50-year-old has an average or a median net worth of $165,000, that's not a whole lot, Drew. We're still talking like very small amounts of money when we talk about, okay, saving for retirement, being able to retire someday. So always keep that in mind. If you're using these numbers as your North Star of what you want to get to and thinking like that's it, I think you need to take a step back and say, okay, actually, if maybe you're not where these net worths are, and that's okay, you can get there. But if you are there, I think this is a sign of don't stop there, because we're not even accounting in this conversation how much you need a net worth to actually retire, because we can't, because we can't look at your individual situation. And plus, we're not financial advisors. So, but that's always something to consider when we're talking through this and when you're looking at any of these types of statistics. But Drew, that brings us into
Mhm.
the 50 to 59-year-olds. So another rule of thumb here is by the time you're 50, you want to have 4 times your annual salary. So if you have $100,000 salary, annual salary, you want to have $400,000 of net worth. 50 to 54-year-olds have a median net worth of 171,000, and then 55 to 59 have a median net worth of 194,000, so just shy of $200,000.
Yeah, something that we haven't talked about yet in this episode, and just in the numbers, it actually paints the picture is when you're younger, you can take much more risks. So you can see these huge jumps in net worth from your younger years, and now as you getting into these 50s and 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever it may be, your risk tolerance should be going down a little bit. You should be maybe taking all of these, high growth, say tech stocks, and putting more stuff into maybe a safer bond, or, a safer type of investment vehicle. And I think that's something that this picture is painting exactly right there, is you don't see as huge of a jump. And maybe that is because of the retirement accounts that then get less risky, is what I should say, and more stable.
And so that stability, that stable, those stable investments kind of segue us into the last bucket here. So your senior stage of life. So this is going to be 60, essentially to retirement age. Here we'll go to 69, but essentially retirement age. The 60 to 64-year-olds have a median net worth of 228,000, and the 65 to 69-year-olds have a median net worth of $272,000. One more rule of thumb we have here to really wrap up, everything we've talked about is by the time you're 60, you want to have at least 6 times your annual salary in your net worth.
So you can think about the six time and 60, a lot of sixes in there
Right.
for for that one. Like you said, another rule of thumb type of number, which is always great. But as you also said, it's not someplace that you want to stop and you want to keep going. And this is where it really comes into those unique situations of what you want to do for retirement. For some people, that could be the nest egg that they need and want, for the lifestyle that they live. But like we said, it's so unique to your own situation. So once you get this number in your head and on paper, then you got to see like where your goals are. And if that planning involves a little bit more, there's always like financial advisors that are, willing to go and help you get to that goal, or help you in the situation you're at
Right.
and move stuff around,
Right.
figure it out, and then really get a clear plan set for you. And I think it's just kind of a lot of these episodes that we've had, and we talk about the uniqueness and the planning aspect for your future and how important that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. And so the reason we stopped at 69 is once you retire, your net worth is what you live off of for the remainder of your life. Yes, obviously you have Social Security and all if you qualify, and all of those other like pension or whatnot. But your nest egg or your net worth is what you have to live off of. So by the time you retire, then you start seeing your net worth decrease, or hopefully flatline, but more often than not, you're going to see that decrease. Just to recap, Drew, some of the rules of thumbs, because I think they are helpful for a listener and hopefully they can at least walk away with that is, by the
Mm-hmm.
time you're 30, you want to have half your annual income. By the time you're 40, you want to have 2 times your annual income and net worth. By the time you're 50, four
Mm-hmm.
times your annual salary. And then by the time you're 60, you want to have 6 times your annual salary. We've talked a whole lot about what net worth is, what you can and cannot do with it, what actually are people's medium net worth by age bucket. How do you start to take all this information and use it so that you can start to use net worth to help you reach your financial goals?
Well, I think it kind of starts with, probably before, actually the net worth probably you could start there, but having your income and your expenses, I think, situated with some type of like a budget and building towards that emergency fund.
Right.
But then that net worth, it's so nice because once you can have that stability in your other personal finances, being able to move that then into the grand picture and say, what are my next steps? I know what my income is, know what my expenses are. So month to month, I'm okay, I'm stable there. Now, over the long term, I can look at it and say, okay, I have a big goal in mind. And now I can just chunk that down into smaller areas and then work on growing that number to what in my life I would want it to be.
So you have your fundamentals, like you said, so budgeting, money management on a month to month basis. You move into your net worth, and now you're starting to really put into effect the plan that you set for your life, your financial plan, using your net worth to track that. And so there's a couple of things you can think about is, paying down debt obviously is the big one to help improve your net worth. We've already talked about a lot of these, but paying down your debt is
Mhm.
going to have a huge impact. One, because you're no longer going to owe anyone anything, and two, it's going to open up a lot of income so that you can now start long-term investing. And
Mhm.
that's really the second piece, is investing into assets that are going to grow and provide income for you in the future, whether that's investing in assets like the stock market, real estate. You could consider your home an investment. However, I don't technically like to do that, Drew, because like you said earlier in the episode, what are you going to do when you retire? Are you willing to sell your home? Is it a liquid net worth asset? If not, then you can't really rely on that for retirement, outside of the fact, right, that you don't have to pay a mortgage, you don't have to pay rent, so you do have lower living expenses when you own your home. But those are just a couple of things. So paying down debt and focusing on investing into
Mhm.
long-term, historically sound assets like the stock market or real estate are going to be really the way to go to hopefully grow your net worth to a point where you need it to be so that you can meet your financial goals in the future.
And if you are in a position too where you're wanting to expand your net worth with some type of, investments outside of just stock markets, and say it's like real estate, you might have a lot of debt on your balance sheet if you had other little real estate properties. But sometimes, like with that Robert Kiyosaki and that Rich Dad Poor Dad, they can even talk about good debt and bad debt. So like the biggest thing on this personal finance balance sheet is sometimes you want to get rid. I mean, the biggest thing is you want to get rid of the toxic bad debt, and then sometimes there might be the good debt that you can actually help grow your net worth in the future. So something to think about is just really taking away, get looking at what's your bad debt, getting rid of that frees up so much more area. And as Cavan said before in another episode, it's not bad to stop putting money into retirement to pay down some of that debt, because it does free up so much more options. And then you can put more of that money into investing once you have that debt gone.
So, Drew, net worth, a really key metric, a really key thing to know when you think about your own personal finance. I know it was something that really changed my view on my personal finance when I started to calculate my net worth, because it did show me where I was. And then it also helped me understand where I needed to go. But based on all of the stuff that we've chatted about here today, what are some of your key takeaways?
A key takeaway for this episode is kind of a starting point. And that's, I think, a really important part into anybody's financial journey. With these benchmark numbers, they're a starting point, but as we said, there's every situation is so unique. But what we want, like this episode, or when you think about net worth, or when you write down what your net worth is we want that to be your starting point to then be curious, so then you can dig deeper and you can go further into your goals and plans, and really makes you think, oh, what do I want to do for retirement, or where do I want to live, or do I want to have a house, or do I want to have a big retirement? So we want the curiosity to be sparked from this starting point. So that's kind of my key takeaway is there's a net worth that you can calculate for yourself, and what's it really do for you? I guess if you just look at a piece of paper, nothing really. So we
Yeah,
kind of want you to act on it
right.
and get curious about it and try planning to make that net worth better instead of just looking at it on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I think the only thing I could add there is, I know we talked about the net worth, the median net worth of individuals, in the United States here, but really that's kind of just out the door. Like, that stuff shouldn't even really matter to you. It's really the fact that you need to know what your long-term financial plan is, and then use your net worth as a tool to track your progress towards that goal. It really doesn't matter where you stack up when it comes to the other people and where their finances are, because they don't have the same goals, they don't have the same long-term visions that you have. You can really use that net worth to help you stay on track and to be able to get some momentum and to watch and to really look for the progress that you make. Drew, you mentioned in the intro that you don't have a green screen behind you and you're enjoying the warm weather in Florida. I'm guessing that's what's going on this week, or for this week, and what's going on in your neighborhood.
Yeah, my neighborhood definitely looks much different today
Much
than
warmer,
it
much
did.
sunnier.
So much more different than the last episodes and the last couple weeks, Minnesota, as you know, has been crazy cold, crazy amounts of snow.
Right.
So it's very nice to be able to get out of Minnesota just for a little while. We're actually in Florida
Yep.
on North Captiva Island is what it's called, and didn't really know about it,
Okay.
and it's a neat island. There's no road or no, is it road access? Is that what you'd call? Or
No
so
vehicle access,
there's
right?
no vehicle
Yeah.
access. Yeah, so everything comes here on a ferry, and the island has a bunch of dirt pathways, and you just drive golf carts around.
That's so
So
cool.
it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I went out for a little golf cart ride with Jordan, my wife, earlier today, and I think we went around the whole island in 30 or 40 minutes.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
very small, and we were putzing, so we weren't even going fast. And then actually, I want to say 2/3 of the island is actually a state park or preserve
Okay.
or whatever you call that.
Yeah.
So I think Jordan might want to go check that out maybe sometime this while we're on vacation.
Nice.
But it's pretty amazing that most of this island is actually nobody's living on it or has any structures because it's all like preserved.
Yeah,
So
that's
that might be
cool.
something interesting to look at.
Have you gotten out to the beach? Like, is a water warm? Because that's all I think about when I think about like Florida. Like, I'm gonna go, put my in a lawn chair, toes in the sand, right?
Water is actually pretty chilly. The air is really warm
Okay.
and it's really hot outside, but the water is, I don't know, it has to be like 55 degrees
No.
or something. It seems chilly.
Yeah.
But something else actually I can talk about today too is I have really bad luck.
Okay.
We're gonna go out fishing this morning,
Yeah.
and actually on like a guided fishing trip, and the motor ended up not working, so we couldn't actually go out fishing. And as I was thinking about it, that's the second guiding boat I've been on in the last like 2 years,
Yeah.
and it's a second boat to break down in some way or form. So I think I am bad luck for
Yeah.
boat motors. If anybody wants to go fishing with me, I would recommend not doing it because it's probably not going to go over super well.
If any of our listeners are guides and provide fishing tours, don't let Drew sign up for a slot because
Don't
it just means your
don't let me
motor's gonna break
aboard.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want that headache.
Nice.
Anything good over in old Minnesota?
Not quite as exciting as warm weather and sandy beaches, but
Mm-hmm.
this weekend Hannah is off to a bachelor party, and so it's going to be my first time with both kids for more than a day, or I should say more than a day and a night. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun just to be with the two kids. It's going to be interesting how it actually plays out because our youngest one has been a little bit fussy throughout the night, and when I say a little bit, she's kind of been a handful, but we're going to make it.
That sounds about it. That sounds about as relaxing as a beach.
Yeah, I think I would take that over a beach any day.
Single dad for the night or weekend with two kids under, or are they both under 2
Under 3.
or 3? Yeah, so that you'll have your hands full there, and I'll be praying for you that Quinn can sleep well and sleeps long nights, and
We'll see.
makes it easy on you.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so as well.
it's been a decent amount of stimulation for my kid going through this, being on the plane. We went down early to see my wife's dad, and I would probably say, I think Jordan said the other day, in like 3 or 4 days she had a combined of like 8 hours of sleep. So
yeah, that's rough.
I'm kind of right there with you and catching up on a little bit of a sleep, but if I don't catch up on sleep, it's not bad to do it here. So I hope that you can catch up on some sleep and Quinn sleeps well.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be having 2 pots of coffee every day.
Right. Well, maybe I'll have to use these next couple of nights to store up some sleep, if that's even a thing.
If that's even a thing, I don't know. Another week, another episode. We had a fun time recording this episode this week about net worth. It's something that you hear about, I think, quite often. And it's nice to be able to go through and see some benchmarks. And as we said, these are just benchmarks. You don't have to worry about that. Set your plan for yourself, make it unique for yourself, and be able to live your life and or retire the way that you want. And we hope you guys will come back to next week to listen to us in the neighborhood. So with that said, thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week in the neighborhood.